Just to stop you there for a moment, Darren. Do you know where Darren's speaking about, Chris? Yeah, I do. It's a public house on the junction of London Road, Rayleigh, and I'm not sure what the other road is. It's a side road. You go up a side road, and there's quite a huge pub. And you say it's near the railway station, if you're coming down the Rayleigh High Street. What is the town? I've understood we've gone towards Chelmsford, Darren. Yeah, but then we get to the traffic lights. It's the Rayleigh traffic lights at Rayleigh. It's the Rayleigh traffic lights. Turn right at the lights. I understood. Sorry, just for clarification. I thought that when you said you'd come out that turning, you turned right towards Chelmsford. Yeah, that's right. And not left towards the Rettendon Turnpike. No, that's right. Right towards Chelmsford. You come up there. Because I go that route to work. Oh, I beg your pardon. That's absolutely right. We just wanted to clarify, Darren, as you were coming from the Rettendon Turnpike when you was with Worms in the car. You're right. I was thinking where I went. Yeah, you're right. It is left. Yeah. So when you picked them up, and you went towards the Rettendon Turnpike. Sorry, yeah, you're right, it was left. And it's straight across the traffic lights where the swimming pool centre is. Anyway, so we pulls in there, and he says, right, go back to the Hilux. Jack and he had a few seconds words together. Then Jack drove off. He said, Jack's going to leave that motor. He took his overalls off, and it was Wellington boots he was wearing. I think it was just overalls and Wellington boots. I don't know if they had gloves on. I think I noticed Jack had some surgical gloves on, you know? Yeah, I think he had some surgical gloves because I didn't get to look in the car because I was only driving. But I think Jack had got a bit of blood over him, like a fairish amount, if you know what I mean. What are you talking on? Speckles like. Specks of blood. Yeah. On him, when they came back to... I sort of glanced, but I didn't really... He was wearing gloves. Wearing gloves, yeah. And it wasn't until it was about half a mile up the road that I realised, like I said to you, that they've shot him. When you were told by Mickey that you were going to go with him and Jack was going to get rid of the car. Yeah. The gun that you'd seen. I hadn't actually see a gun. I only see a bit. Well, the barrel protruding from the bag then. Yeah. I see a bit that had apparently, when he fired, the gun had fell apart and a bit had fell on the floor and they'd finished like shooting them and they could find this fucking bit. And Jack had phoned me and Mick was still with a torch hunting around, trying to find this piece of the gun. And he found it, because then I said, where's Mick? He said, oh, it won't be a second. And he come wandering up, you know? So at the time then, you left Worms in the Passat and went over to Mickey's car. What had happened to what you believed was the barrel of the gun then? Everything was in the Passat. Everything was in the Passat. Everything was in the Passat. And where did Mickey get changed? He literally stood next to his Hilux and it was snowy. He took off his Wellington boots and then his overalls, I think. It didn't click because I opened the doors. I just sat in there and I thought, fucking hell. That's when I lost it a bit and thought, what's happening in here? Fucking hell, I can't believe. I think he undid his overalls and pushed them down to below his wellies and stepped out of his welly and put a shoe on and stepped out of another welly and put a shoe on. And the whole lot got screwed up when in the back of I'm not sure if we put it in the back of his Hilux or in the back of the Passat. Because and how far was the Passat from the Hilux roughly? Parked, next to each other. It just pulled in, but I was in the passenger seat. And the Passat would have been the other side, What I mean, like the driver's side. And I was sitting there it's difficult to think how I felt. But staring forwards, really not thinking. But I know I remember seeing him. Because I was freezing cold. I really was cold. And I was thinking, phew. And he took them off. He took the overalls down. And, over the wellies. And then sort of pushing his jeans down over the top of the boots. And took them off. And slipped his shoes on. And then I don't know what he did with the overalls and wellies. Didn't know then what he did with them. And then we went. Tell me. You say that you did not know what happened later. Is that what you're saying? What, at a later date? I remember him saying that Jack had something like Jack had either melted down the guns or ground them up to small pieces and then thrown them in the fucking sea, basically. And the car had got rid of, but all the clothing they'd been wearing had been burnt back at Mick's. Because Mick still had the remains of this bonfire. It had gone out, but there was this big heap. And he says all the wellies and overalls had been burnt. Like he's telling me this at a later date. But then when we were coming back in the car, when we were coming back in the Hilux, he was telling me how cold-hearted Jack is. He said, I didn't really get time to shoot him. He said because Jack had some sort of pump action, like it took quite a few cartridges. He said by the time I stepped out of the car and Jack had given me this little gun, Jack had already leant in the car and shot all three of them. And I said, oh. And he said, I saw one of them twitch. So I put both barrels to their head and fucking pulled the trigger. Like I went, oh. And then he said, I think he said that Jack he had reloaded and shot Tatey anyway, even though I think by the sounds of it, he was well and truly dead. And then he said, I think Jack reloaded and went round behind each of them. I shot them in the back of the head as well. This is like, because this is Mick talking, like on the way back. And I'm just sitting there thinking, fucking hell, I don't ever want to upset these two. And he dropped me back off at my motor. And then I was just on the way home. I rang up my mate and said, are you coming for a beer? And he said, no, I'm staying in. I said, no, come for a beer. I've got to have a beer. I said, come for a beer with me, please. He said, all right. Then I meet you in the pub. So I stopped in the pub, drank a few beers. And then he said, are you all right? I said, I'm just having a bad day. He said, are you sure? I said, oh, I'm just having the worst day of my life. I said, everything's going wrong. He said, what's wrong? And I didn't say anything. I was fucking double shocked about it. And then the next day, Mick says, I think it was the next day, Mick, well, I don't know how long after, because I don't even want to talk to the bloke. And the next time I spoke to him, he said, that's what happens to people. That fucked me off. He said, that'll teach you and all of his mates. And then they were laughing a while later. Who's they? Him and Jack. Because there's a bloke I was in prison that I couldn't get on with, name of Ian Spindler. He was like, oh, I can't get on with that bloke. He talks about posh things. He thinks he's far better than the rest of the world, and especially me. And like he thought he was a really big man, weight trained with Pat Tate. And like he was in the gym one day, made a little bit of a row, and basically I hit him. And like we split up, they sent him back to the unit. When I came back to the unit, we had a bit of a punch up. He lost. I beat him, and it was witnessed by a prison officer. So they got rid of Spindler, because Spindler was the blue-eyed boy. He was ex-Navy. Half the officers, something like Matlow, and all this sort of thing, they were all like Spindler's blue-eyed boy, you know? I don't know what rank he got, but our irrelevance, I didn't get on with him. They were saying it's a shame, because when I was in the Range Rover, he said, oh, if we'd have waited 5 more minutes, Ian would have come with us, meaning Ian Spindler, you know? But apparently he got some sort of rank anyway. And he went, and afterwards, because Mick said to me, that would have been nice, Dar. He said, you've never liked him. We would have shot him for you and all. I said, yeah, lovely like. And then the subject dropped. End of, really. It literally sounds mad. I literally forgot it had happened. And the next day, I'd gone home. Got up at 4 a.m, gone to work, did my day's work, come home, stayed in a pub. Like the topic of conversations in the pub, it was announced on the radio about the shooting. Then everyone's talking about it. And then I thought, fucking hell. So I just drank my beer and said, let's go home. I don't want to drink tonight. And that was it really for then. Then no contact with Mick. And like, never finished his house. I've had an excuse not to go round there. And then he starts ringing me up again to pop round and that. Then he had a load of drugs a little while ago of someone called Russell from Southend. Someone called Russell. He was importing some drugs for someone called Russell. And same thing. Have you got a passport, Dal? I said, no, I haven't got a passport. He says, well, you should fucking get one. And I said, well, I don't want one. I said, I can't be involved. He said, why not? It's good money. I said, no offence, but what happened? After it happened in December, I didn't want to be involved. I said, because I didn't want to fall out with you. No, it won't happen to you. No, you're sweet. You're lovely, Dad. You're all right. No, I said. Well, I haven't got a passport, and I'm not getting one. Well, you can find out exactly when it was. I'll tell you why. Because he said, do me a favour and rent me a car. I said, why? He said, I've got to go down and meet someone at Portsmouth or something like that. He said, they're doing it for me. An African. A white South African. Something like that, yeah. Don't know the geezer's name. Nothing. He said, rent me a car. I said, all right then. He gave me the money. He said, any car you want. He said, look, ring Budget. So I rang Budget and I said, can I rent a car, please? And they said, yeah, certainly. I went down there, I rented a brand new white Mondeo, brand new N-Reg Mondeo, 16 diesel turbo with a boot, not an estate car. This was in Chelmsford. And he said, right, take my Hilux around your house and I'll see you later, he said. I only want it for now. I'll come back in 7 hours' time and you can have the Mondeo for the week, for the inconvenience. I said, all right. And then I thought, blimey, this is the first time he hasn't done anything to me. That's like stitching me up a bit. So he came back 7 hours later. And I said, where's the Mondeo? Well, I spoke to this bloke. I had to slip across to Ostend, he said. I left it with someone. I said, what'd you do that for? He said, well, they needed it. Then I found out that he'd actually been over there to meet someone I don't know. Russell. You might know his later name. Anyway, someone called Russell has arranged people that drive drugs all the way from Spain, all up to Ostend. And Peter. I mean, have you got Peter? I mean, you have got Peter. You must have Peter, yeah? No doubt you got the rest of them. Peter goes over there for the drugs off these people. Don't know who they are, but I know one of them's a white South African or a South African or something like that. Probably white South African. But he's prejudiced against black people. So I don't think he'd give a black person a job. So he said, I left my car with them, he said. None of them wanted to stay with the drugs in the car, he said. So I left your Mondeo. I went, how could you do that? I said, left the Mondeo registered to me. That'd be okay. I said, oh, what's that then? He said, don't worry, he said. I'm going to go home, he said, get some sleep, he said. Tomorrow, early evening, I'm going to stick the boat in over there. I'm going to pick up the drugs. I'm going to come back. This is Mick telling me. He said, then this bloke will be straight back and you'll have the Mondeo like I said, I don't know what day. I rented the Mondeo on a Friday. I remember that because it was a Friday. And I shut, I think, about an hour later. Mick came back and woke me up at 5 a.m. on Saturday morning. So he'd gone say 12 hours. He'd come back with Jack. So I don't know how Jack got involved in this anyway. Jack? Worms. Like as I say, he said, you got my Hilux keys? I said, yeah. I had the Mondeo conversation. He said, no, it'd be back with you Saturday morning, he said. He said, you have it tomorrow afternoon. So I said, are you sure? I mean, what can I say to him? To be honest, I'm petrified of the geezer. So we went, no, you'll have it. So Sunday afternoon comes. He said, I've got your Mondeo. Do you want it? I think it was Sunday afternoon. Might have been Monday. I've got your Mondeo here. Come and pick it up. I goes and picks it up. There's quite a few scratches on it. Like it's brand new. And people, when they vetted the car, said, look, not a scratch. If you agree, sign. If it gets a fucking scratch, we're going to charge you 1.5 for a scratch deposit. So I said, there's scratches on it. As it happens, they were black marks. And I polished them off. And I took it back. He said, oh, by the way, if the police come round and anything. I said, yeah. He said, well, it won't be the police. Probably customs, he said. Tell them the car was stolen. Why? He said, well, the bloke driving it back got pulled. They completely searched and stripped the car to the ground. Gave it a proper complete strip, he said. Twice, actually. Kept it there for 4 hours, he said. And when they said who owns the car, he said the silly in South African said, I don't know. And I told Peter your name. I said, all you've got to do is say you borrowed it off Darren Nicholls. He was a bit drunk at the pub, lent me the keys. But the bloke couldn't remember your name, Dar. He said, so they might come round because they got to check with the budget. And budget said, yeah, Mr. Nicholls rented it. And the bloke went, oh yeah, that's right, Mr. Nicholls. And he said, so you know, and it was empty of diesel. But he gave me 30 quid. Because when I got the car, it was also full up to the brim. So you take it back full up to the brim. Then he went, hi-ho sort of thing. And that was, I mean, no police or customs came round. Obviously, you probably knew about the car. I took it back a day early. Because if they phoned up, budget knows, I've lent a car to someone that I shouldn't have done. And they might, have a go at me. And I didn't really want to be had a go at. So I took it back the night before and just put the keys through the door with a letter saying, it sounds silly, but I can't even face a fucking budget rent-a-car if they ask me a question about it. So I wouldn't know what to say to him. So I took it back early. And that was, whenever that was. And then he had, go on. He had some drugs. And I had a bit off him. He sort of went, go on, Dow. So I took a bit. I took a little bit. And again, the same mate of mine took it. And Wolfie was involved here. Because he knew all about it. He told me he'd been informed by someone, of one of his informers. I've fucked up the story up here again. No, you're right, mate. I've sort of gone forward probably a month, but forgot to say something. So basically, he said to me, because then Darren, if I could just say at this moment, we've been talking for nearly an hour and a half. And I was going to say, I don't know how you feel, but it's 10:30 now. And we've sort of arrived at a convenient sort of time, if you like, for tonight. Do you know, perhaps call it a day? Because it's obvious it's been quite a strain on you. Right, I've missed loads of things out. Well, it'll also give you time to gather your thoughts. The thing is, a lot of the thoughts I don't want to remember. Well, I appreciate that. But there are probably a lot of things that are going to come to your mind now that we started talking about it. There is things like... Anyway, yeah, there's things I've already forgot about. Alright, well, hang on. Shall we call it for a day for now? If you reflect on what you've said so far, we can go back over it like a jog tomorrow to bring you back up to speed with what we've got here. Then we'll carry on having filling in the details and take it from here, because it's a convenient point to stop at this point where you've taken the car back to budgets, I think, and then we'll carry on from there. I've missed out quite a few bits. We've already said to you, Darren, this is going to be a longer rather than shorter operation. Yeah, I've just thought of different things, like I've been talking about like Mick when I've missed out other people around me, if you know what I mean. Like a few burglars. Yeah, I know. I was going to ask you about that. Do you want a pencil and paper to make some jotter notes for yourself tonight? No, I'll just go through it. And it comes like you say. I didn't realise how long I've been talking for. Nearly an hour and a half, Darren. So I think it's convenient. Feels like I've been talking about 5 minutes. Yeah, well, you've got a lot that you obviously want to get out of yourself. And it's obviously trauma. We'll call it a day for tonight, Darren. Now 22:30 on Tuesday the 14th of the 5th, 96. This interview's now being concluded. Okay.